everyone. Welcome to Money Matters TV. My name is Doug Hepburn, your host. I'm with Hepburn Financial Advisors in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. We offer securities and investment advisory services through Sychterz Advisors, member FINRA, SIPC, a broker-dealer and registered investment advisor. Sychterz is separately owned from any other named entity. I would love to welcome my guest host today, Katy Sychterz, Assistant Manager at Princeton Mortgage. Katy, what's new in your world?
Lots is new. As you know, we're waiting for the Fed's announcement actively right now. We are expecting them to raise rates by 25 basis points. I don't think it's going to be a significant impact, but clearly we're not over, that hump of fighting inflation and bringing this market back to something a little bit more normal. But I think that buyers out there, it's not stopping them. We've seen actually an increase in applications at the beginning of the quarter, which is good news. Low inventory, so we're waiting on those sellers to kind of open up and decide to make that move. But yeah, I think it's going to progress into a little bit of a better year this year.
Fantastic. That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
So I know in the last show you had some tax news for us. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. I right at the end of the year, Congress passed this huge 4,000-page omnibus bill, and part tucked in there was the Secure Act 2.0. And they passed Secure 1.0 back in 2020. But 2.0 has all kinds of changes to retirement rules. And there was just a few that I wanted to touch on. I know some I mentioned in the previous show. One was that, if you're currently taking RMDs, that's not going to change. You have to continue taking them. But if you were born between 1951 and 59, you're going to get another year to put off having to take money out of your IRA. And what I mean by that is, it used to be when you got to age 70 and a half, you had to take what are known as RMDs, required minimum distributions. The government forced you to take money out so that you pay tax on it. But now that's being pushed back to age 73 for anybody born in years 1951 through 59. If you were born in 1960 or after, you'll be able to wait until age 75 to begin taking RMDs, which is kind of interesting because, obviously people are living longer. It creates a planning opportunity because you can allow that money to grow for a longer period of time in your retirement account. But it also creates some other issues because, if you hit 75 and you do have a huge amount of money in your retirement plan, in your IRA, now you got to take bigger RMDs, which means more taxes. So it creates an opportunity for planning. So, if you're thinking about this and want to incorporate it into your plan, I strongly recommend that people talk to their advisor about it. We're going to be releasing stuff on my website, hepburnadvisors.com, with more information and more details on the Secure 2.0 Act. One huge benefit that I know some people may not be thinking about unless they were actually caught in this situation is that there are actually reduced penalties for failing to take your required minimum distribution. So, for example, let's suppose that you had to take an RMD of $10,000 one year and you didn't do it. There's a 50% excise tax on the part you didn't take. That's what the old rule was. So that 10,000 of assets that you were supposed to distribute, if you didn't distribute it, theoretically, the IRS would say, you know what, $5,000 is gone. And the other $5,000, you got to pay income tax on that. They've changed that regime. And what they've done is Congress has reduced the penalty from 50% to 25%. And it's reduced another down to 10% if you make a correction, if you distribute it within the quote correction window. Now the correction window starts when the tax is assessed, and there's some particulars around that. But this is a relief for a lot of people because there was a lot of uncertainty in this area. And what happened was people would fail to take it they'd have to go and plead forgiveness to the IRS and hope that maybe it was forgiven. So one of the things that was part of this act was to create a structure for people to request relief and actually get relief with some clear guidelines on how to do that. It also created a statute of limitations. So if you filed your tax return, 5 years ago and on time, and you failed to take your RMD, the IRS can't go back 5 or 10 years and say, "Oh, you didn't take this money out and should have done it. We're going to assess you a tax on that." They can't do that. The statute of limitations, unless of course there's fraud, in which there's no statute of limitations. So this is a big relief. It's not going to affect a lot of people, but it creates clarity in the tax code, and I think that's good for everyone. Another big advantage that I liked in this is simple plans, which are not quite 401k plans. You can have a simple 401k or simple IRA, and Roth and SEP plans, simplified employee pensions. So those business owners are self-employed. You can now make Roth contributions to those. And I think that's going to open up a lot of opportunities. And what this really tells me is that, Congress is planning for Roth IRAs to be around for a long time. So I think that's good. Another big thing that we're seeing is that there's been an increase in catch-up contributions. So obviously Congress wants to make sure that baby boomers can save enough for their retirement, but there's a catch. If you're making over $145,000 a year beginning in 2024, you're going to be forced to make that catch-up contribution as a Roth contribution. So, it's meaning after tax. Traditional IRA, you get the tax deduction for it, but you pay tax on it when you take the money out. With a Roth IRA, you don't get a tax deduction, but you don't pay tax on the earnings or the money you put in when you take it out. So those are both pretty big changes. Another one, which I'll put on my website, is the ability to roll over money from a 529 plan into an IRA. There's obviously this is subject to IRS regulations, which are forthcoming. But, you got to have the same beneficiary on the Roth IRAs on the 529. There are rules around that. There must be compensation. And you can't do it where contributions were made in the last 5 years. But for those people who either had kids that didn't go to college or didn't spend all their 529 money, this is a great way to get some of it back and use it for retirement, potentially. But there's a lot of rules there. Now, one thing I wanted to switch back to you. We actually got a viewer question from Ruth Donaldson in Philadelphia. She wanted to know, what are the 3 C's of lending and what do they mean?
Well, that's a good question, because you do see that a lot. And in our world, we speak in acronyms. So a lot of people will read different things out there and not really know what they stand for. So always ask these kind of questions. The 3 C's are credit, capacity, and collateral. As we like to call them, CIA, credit, income, and assets. And they're the 3 components for any lender to make the recommendation and decision to approve somebody for financing. So credit, it all, of course, starts with that score. That's going to tell us everything, your credit history, the debt usage, your monthly payments. And that's going to help us establish maybe your loan program, your interest rate, and of course, your eligibility. The income or your capacity, it's going to show us your ability to repay the loan. We're not just looking for that dollar amount you take in monthly, but also your employment history, and is your employment likely to continue? So we do look at the whole picture of your employment and income to figure out what you qualify for. And then assets or collateral is, where is your down payment coming from? All lenders have to make a paper trail of all monies being used for the transaction. So whether it's just your checking or savings, liquid accounts, Are you liquidating your IRA, your 401k, stocks, gifts? We would document that with the donor and any grants you're going to get. So we verify all of that to see where your assets are. So with all three of those elements, it's just going to determine your eligibility and what you qualify for, how much you qualify for. So we know that you're stepping into a mortgage, confident that you can make your payments.
Very, very helpful answers. I appreciate that, Katy.
Oh, thanks.
If you have a question for Money Matters TV, here's how to send in your question.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
Well, you don't have to be a sports fan to know that Philadelphia sports teams have had some success recently with the Phillies and the Eagles. And so if you live in Philadelphia or anywhere near it, or you're a fan of those teams, sports is probably on your mind, even if you're not a rabid fan. Our guest today, Steve Rosenberg, is the principal of GSD Group. And Steve has a background in sports management. Steve, how are you?
I'm great, Doug. Hi, Katy. Nice to be with you guys today.
Hi, Steve.
Oh, thanks for being here. Give us a brief background on your history in sports and business.
So I actually have an undergraduate degree in sports administration from a time when there were only 2 universities in the United States that actually had undergraduate programs. So I picked neither of them, went to a school, designed my own major, and I have a sports administration degree, and immediately began working in the NBA for the then Washington Bullets, where my first assignment was to help Americanize a 7'7" Sudanese basketball player by the name of Manute Bol. And here I was, this, young American guy from Pittsburgh, by the way, and here was a 7'7" Sudanese guy. I was not his primary handler, and in addition to try to help him around, I had to drive him places sometimes. And I had a small Toyota Tercel, which they don't even make anymore. And the first time he got into my car, we didn't know how to even get him in my car, so we flung him in the back seat, put the front seat down, his legs draped over the front seat, so I would be driving and I would look to my right and I would just see knees. And we had no communication. Had there been social media back then, I would have been trending for many, many, many days. And, I eventually came up here and worked for the Flyers and for Spectacor, and it was just Spectacor, and eventually went out on my own and was doing a lot of work for the World Wrestling Federation and the National Hockey League and Harlem Globetrotters. And I've been blessed to do create some of my own events, a Hockey Legends series of events between the Flyers alumni, the Rangers alumni, and the Islanders alumni. And don't forget, in those 3 areas, those alumni at one point were even more had more notoriety than the current players. And
Wow.
We would sell out to Nassau Coliseum, Madison Square Garden, and the Spectrum, where my office was at one point, at an arena that I'll miss forever. But we would sell those places out watching guys like Joe Watson and Bill Barber and Clark Gillies play hockey. And
my heroes.
The greatest. So I've had a really interesting career in sports. I'm still real involved with a number of not-for-profits and youth sports. And it was interesting listening to the two of you talk, because no matter what, the one thing that is completely recession-proof, doesn't matter how many basis points are going to get raised or what people have in that IRA, sports does not, the spend on sports doesn't end. I just read this morning that the number one stock so far performance for 22 are the sports wagering websites, like DraftKings and FanDuel. They're way outperforming the entire market. Now they're still only trading, I think, at like $5 or $6, but sports, as I like to say it, are the opiate of the masses. Now, Karl Marx said religion is the opiate of the masses, but when you think about sports, we consume it in I don't care if you're a fan or not. In Philadelphia, everybody knew what Red October meant back in October. And we watch it, we talk about it, we think about it, we wager on it. I'm down in Miami promoting a new book that I wrote, and I went to the University of Miami basketball last night, and people can't get the money out of their pockets fast enough to buy tickets, to buy $7 beer and $7 pretzels and, popcorn. And it doesn't end. So I love it, frankly.
Cool.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. So, Steve, what I wanted to know is, how have sports been able to teach life lessons, both on and off the field?
Well, Katy, that's a great question. About in 2005, very quick story, I was running the Lower Merion Little League out on the main line, and I decided, after watching my oldest son have his trophies that he earned in one particular area of his room and his participation trophies buried under the bed, I said, let's just do away with participation trophies. And you would have thought that I said, you know what, at the end of the season, we're going to beat the kids, because the uproar that became about the elimination of participation trophies was awful. So I don't know if I invented the participation trophy rage, but I certainly was an early adopter of the fact that we need to do away with those things. I believe that you need, particularly as a young person, you need to learn how to win. You definitely need to learn how to lose, because in life, you're going to lose. You can't win all the time. And sports, the competitive nature of sports, and learning how to be a good teammate, learning how to respect your coach or the other coaches, the other players, the parents, whatever it is, those are life lessons that you must, that reverberate throughout life forever. And when we take losing away and learning how to lose, when we take winning away, we don't set these kids up for success. I also just read just a few minutes ago, before I came on ESPN.com, that a 60-year-old guy in Vermont died because there was a massive brawl in the stands at a Vermont middle school basketball game. Okay, so There has to be a balance also. But Katy, if you don't learn to win and lose early, you're going to have a really hard time when you're our age.
So true.
I'm so glad you mentioned the whole participation trophy thing, because that's something that I also, as a coach in youth sports, many different sports, was opposed to, because we live in a meritocracy, and so people get recognized for doing good, and in that, what role does philanthropy play in business, and how does CSR impact business today?
Well, today the world, you guys know, the world has totally changed. And what's interesting in the intersection in sports is you're now starting to see athletes get involved in philanthropy. They have foundations, men and women athletes. They have their own foundations, and they get involved. I've been involved in Jameer Nelson, a local hero from Chester, Pennsylvania, who has a great foundation and started a wonderful AAU program. I have been involved in Kyle Lowry, who played at Villanova, and I've seen what he's done philanthropically, along with his brother Lonnie. I'm a co-founder of a project that's called Philly Youth Basketball. We're opening a year from a couple weeks ago in Nicetown, and it's a youth sports empowerment center that's using basketball as a way to help kids learn more about their life, whether that be being better students, better, learn how to eat better, whatever it is. But when you look at who is building that, we raised $30 million from athletes, from philanthropists locally, including a lead gift. If you're a Sychterz fan, their number one fan, Alan Horowitz, the guy with the long white hair who sits courtside waving a towel and does not miss a game. The place is going to be called the Sixth Man Center, named after Alan Horowitz. So that intersection between sports and philanthropy is growing and growing and growing. Whereas 25 years ago, you didn't see athletes doing this. You have LeBron James building schools. You had the late great Kobe Bryant getting involved in so many different things, and that is an area where athletes really are paving the way in such a positive way.
I couldn't agree with you more. And just to riff on that, I think it's great to see these athletes who have done so well in their professional lives and financially bring attention to those things that are important. I also am involved in a sports charity. I'm not sure if if you've heard of Bo Bikes Bama, but it's a charity ride to raise money for victims of natural disasters down in Alabama, and it was started back in 2011 because there were a bunch of tornadoes down there.
Right.
And so, there's a lot of great things that these athletes are doing by having this charitable bent. I think that's awesome.
Well, you both see it. You have companies that get involved in whether it's bike races or runs or walks. Those are all, to me, it's not sport, but it's athletic in nature. And these companies sponsor these because they have to make sure that their mission beyond the bottom line is resonating with their employees, particularly these Gen Zs. And it's a good way to get out. It's a good way to network. The book I just wrote is all about networking and the power of building your network and the importance of that. And Gen Z, particularly those who've been locked in at home for 2 years after COVID, and with social media, which I like to refer to as anti-social media, it's a different type of generation now, and we've got to get them out. And sometimes these walks, these rides, these runs are some of the best ways to get people out communicating and being together again, which we have to socialize normally again.
And not to take up too much time, but Bo Bikes Bama was started by Bo Jackson, the Heisman Trophy winner who played for Auburn, and
greatest
that's
athlete
where they
ever
hold it each year. Yeah,
the greatest athlete
guy
ever.
was phenomenal. Guy was phenomenal. I love riding that event, and
Good for you.
It's got a great cause. So
that's great. That's great.
So, Steve, you've written about the lack of focused leadership. How would you suggest we work on that problem for the future generations?
I don't think we have enough time to answer it the way I would like to, Katy, but, look, we have a dearth of real leaders. And I listened to the two of you at the beginning, and I said, those are people that are passionate about their work. And I think that we lack authenticity in our leadership. I think we lack passion amongst leaders. And I think we lack good, clear, honest communication, particularly around the public sector. And that's a whole way that we could divide that and conquer that. But in business today, you have this term of, quiet quitting, and and one of the reasons people are quiet quitting, I believe, is the employees are unsatisfied with their leaders, with their managers, with their bosses. And people have to learn to meet other people where they are in their life. I literally grew up in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood in the Squirrel Hill section of Pittsburgh. And I never thought that I would still, at this age in my life, be talking about Mr. Rogers. But that guy used what we're on right now, the most disruptive invention in the history of the world, in my mind, television, to bring issues to the forefront and talk about things that people didn't talk about in the late 60s and early 70s. But he did it by being very authentic and very real and making sure, what was his theme? Talk to your neighbor. And we don't do that anymore. And we lack that authenticity and that genuine sort of, hey, how are you? What's new? Nobody does that. It's all about me and this is what I'm doing. And again, this social media thing is terrible in my opinion. It's not helpful. But Katy, if we don't get back to authenticity and genuineness and kindness, I don't know how we're ever going to solve any problems.
Yeah, I agree.
You raise a lot of great points, and one of the things that in business and in sports, a lot of people are recognized for either their successes or their failures, and most of the time, people look at these as two diametrically opposed things, but they're not really, are they?
Not at all. Not at all. People say to me all the time, what's the opposite of success? And to me, the opposite of success is not failure. It's very simple. The opposite of success is not trying. Every day we are given a gift, and it's called life. And we've got to get up and we've got to take advantage of everything that we have. And I remember my oldest son was a baseball player and, ended up qualifying for the Olympics back in 2021. His little league coach and his AAU coach, whenever they broke the huddle, they would go 1, 2, 3, and they would say attitude. And the coach would say to him, what's the one thing you can control in your life? And that's attitude. And if you don't give your all every day, look, you said it, we're a meritocracy, Doug. Some people are going to achieve more than others. But everybody can achieve some level of success. You have to try, you have to give it your all each and every single day. Success doesn't come free. It doesn't come easy. It's called work for a reason. And we have to go out and we have to hustle. We have to grind. And I'll say this, every time I meet somebody, a new employee, I give them a pencil, a brand new number 2 unsharpened pencil. And I say 3 things about it. I say, number 1, for this pencil to work, you have to put it in a sharpener and you have to grind it, right, to stay sharp. And that probably hurts. And that's like life. We've got to stay sharp and it's going to hurt. Number 2, what's at the opposite end of the point is an eraser, because we're going to make a lot of mistakes. So let's use the eraser. Let's erase our mistakes and move forward. And number 3, what's the most important thing that pencil does is it leaves a mark. So let's leave our mark on society each and every day, and don't waste any time, because we don't ever get our time back.
Awesome metaphor.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Feel free to take
jumping
it.
on success and building your success and trying, explain why networking and building a network is so important.
You know, I didn't know this. I was sort of, my mom died at a real young age. I lived with my grandparents. We didn't have a great means. And so travel and going places was not something that we had. So I found that people and their stories and their journeys was how I got to sort of see the world, if you will. And so I started to become this voracious networker. And I learned quickly that once you meet somebody and you keep in touch with them, you build this network. And I always try to be 1 degree away from fixing any problem. It could be chief lettuce picker upper, or it could be solving a problem at a very high level. And it's one thing to go to a chamber of commerce event with a bunch of business cards and hand them out. That's not networking. Networking is staying in touch, following up, wishing people a happy birthday. Every day, I know everybody's birthday. I have 9,000 contacts in my phone. Most of them have birthdays. And the day before, at 4 o'clock before their birthday, they're getting a happy birthday text from me. Why the day before at 4 o'clock? Because who's wishing you happy birthday at 4 o'clock before your birthday? Nobody. So that's a noticeable thing that people recognize, right? Every Sunday, I make a list of 100 people that I'm going to reach out to in some way, shape, or form for the following week. I challenge anybody that's watching this to try to do that each and every week. That's a job into itself. But networking really, no matter what you do, you could be a plumber, you could be a bus driver, you could be a financial planner, an analyst, whatever you want to do, you will be as successful as big as your network is, in my humble opinion.
Man, Steve, that is phenomenal advice for anybody of any age, whether you're, a baby boomer or Gen Z. I think all of that is fantastic, particularly the networking piece, knowing who to call and when to call them and be able to identify issues and the people you can lean on. That's critical. I'd like to thank you for being our guest today. You gave a lot of great information. Hopefully our viewers have taken as much in as they can. If they want more information, do you have a website they can go to?
Yes, they could get the book at MakeBold, BOLD, thingshappen.com, MakeBoldThingsHappen.com, and everything is right there.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this episode of Money Matters TV, where your money matters. If you liked it, please hit the like button, share it with your friends. We'd love to see more viewers. Thank you.
Thank you.